Papa got beats, make it hit like
come down. Ooh, you make my high come down. Always tripping when you come around. I'ma have to cut you off, like right now. You see, I don't want to drive me. You can say that for your mama. Maybe you should smoke some. Me try the marijuana. I was never you good. The vibe was straight. Showed you a couple of things and they feeling strange. I treated you right. Everything was a gift from a time to your bag and the color on your lip. Gave you plenty of.
Welcome to Seahawks Man to Man podcast powered by The Athletic. Shout out to the company. My name is Michael-Shawn I'm here with my co-host Christopher Kidd. Make sure you follow us both up on the tweet machine. You guys know where to follow me. You guys know where to follow Chris as well. But we want to shout out the YouTube channel. Shout out to everybody who watches on YouTube. Seahawks Man to Man on YouTube. Chris, talk to him.
What is up, everybody? It's your boy Christopher Kidd. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at CKIDD206 and that's CKid206.
All right, and we have a special guest with us to kind of kick off our draft coverage. Feels weird to kick it off in April, but that's what we're doing here. We have making his second appearance on the Seahawks Man to Man podcast, I believe. Is that right, Chris? We have Danny Kelly of The Ringer. Danny, what's going on, man? Welcome back.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me back again. Different circumstances, obviously, now with whole new ball game, whole new era in Seahawks football, which is fun. Yeah, exciting.
Do you get asked about Seattle and their quarterback situation as much as I do? Like, that's everything that people want to ask me about on the street.
People are always asking me if I'm sad about Russell Wilson leaving, which I think that's a tough question to answer, really, because on one hand, obviously, it doesn't make any sense to trade a quarterback like Russell Wilson, but on the other hand, it's like kind of fascinating to see like where the Seahawks are going to take this and like if they can do what they obviously believe they can do in terms of like rebuilding a program, rebuilding the whole team around, I think what Pete Carroll wants to do, which is be very balanced, play better defense. Obviously, I'm sure it was killing him watching some of the defenses over the last few years in terms of like just how many points and yards they've been giving up and explosive plays, all that. I think it's just gonna be fascinating. It kind of makes me nostalgic for, the early days of the Pete Carroll, John Schneider era during 2010, 2011, when, they were like grinding the waiver wire, just like the roster churn, all that stuff, and trying to find like guys that would fit and play unique roles for them. I'm just thinking like Red Bryant. Maybe they'll find guys like that. So when you don't have an established quarterback and an established like top tier quarterback, and you probably don't look like a Super Bowl team, it's like it's a whole different it's just a whole different style of like fandom, I guess. So it's interesting.
Yeah, this is like the time in the calendar to trade Russell too, because like everyone can sell hope. You can talk yourself into anyone. I've talked myself into Malik Willis and Desmond Ridder over the course of the last 3 weeks.
Yes,
you can talk yourself into Baker Mayfield, and you can see Russell post stuff on social media and be like, "Well, glad that corny guy is not our guy anymore." And then as soon as August hits, you're like, "Oh wait, we don't have a quarterback." Oh damn! Like screw Pete, screw John. Like this is the time they can sell, and then it's time to throw passes to people, and then. I think that's when a lot more of the people who are like, let's see what Pete and John do are like, damn.
I know.
What did Pete and John do? That's just my thought on it.
I think you're absolutely right. It's like when the chips are down and they're actually playing games, like this is going to get kind of ugly.
Right.
I think the majority of the time, though, it's going to be able to sell that hope. And like, training camp is going to be fun because there's going to be all these different storylines that we're not really used to. Like, obviously, the quarterback competition is going to be fun. But yeah, I don't know. It's a trade-off, obviously. So
Definitely.
We'll see how it goes.
I'm right there with you. I'm just as optimistic, but I did go back and do some research, and I looked up your draft guide from 2019, and you had Drew Lock, shades of smoke-free Jay Cutler, which I thought was like spot on. I'm like, okay, so let's see what else Danny's talking about here. So I grabbed the quote, and it is, he's a talented thrower, but to unlock his potential, he'll need to clean up his mechanics and play with more discipline under pressure. Both are big asks. Now that he is out of Denver and with the Seahawks, do you see him being a fit in this Seahawks system where managing the game, not looking to create turnovers, just pretty much being a pure point guard, I guess, is what Pete is looking for here?
Yeah, I think so. It's funny because honestly, the scouting report that I wrote, like, number one, I'm kind of patting myself on the back a little bit because it turned out pretty real. But I think it hasn't really changed, honestly. Like he's still that guy where like he'll flash on one or two plays and it'll be like, oh, okay, like I can see this. This makes sense. Like he'll hit like a deep out or like a deep bomb or something, and you'll see that potential and that talent that he does have. He does have talent. But I think the decision making is just tough, and like obviously what he's done in the last, I think, year or two, in starting for the Broncos and being a backup or whatever, like it's just he hasn't been able to run a very effective offense. Like it's just not been efficient whatsoever. So generally speaking, I'm not super optimistic. But like skill set wise, he has a good skill set. Like, and honestly, I wonder where he would go if he was in this draft class with D's rookie right now. Because let's see here, he is now. How old is he? He's 25. 26? So he's like 1 year older than Kenny Pickett.
Oh, wow.
Which is bizarre. You know, I mean, like if he was coming out in this draft, I think people probably be pretty excited about him. And so that gives you kind of, I guess, the baseline. That's probably what the Seahawks are thinking. Like if we had this guy in this draft, where would we take him compared to Kenny Pickett, compared to Malik Willis, compared to Ritter, whoever? I suspect they probably have him pretty high based on like their pre-draft, grades based compared to this class, which is a part of the reason that, they're given an opportunity to compete here. Decision making, I think, is the biggest one. His footwork is kind of a mess at times, but I've had a surprising number of Broncos fans like tweeting at me and like, they're like obviously very happy that Russell Wilson's there, but like I've had a surprising amount of Bronco fans be like, I don't know, man, I still kind of believe in Drew Lock after all that. So we'll see how it goes. I don't think, like, I'm not optimistic. I'd put the odds on like 30% that it'll turn out to be a pretty good starter, but maybe that's even too high, but I think they're still going to make a few moves here.
Actually, you're right, Danny. John Schneider is basically thinking of it like I think he said it at the owners' meetings or either somewhere. He said it. I remember looking at it when he said it and thinking, "Wow, he believes that." Like if he's kind of looking at if Drew was in this class, I have the quote somewhere. I should have digged it up, but like he says something to the effect of, "He was in this class, imagine where he'd go." And perhaps there's something to that. I'm not exactly sure because the reality is he's not in this class,
right?
And the fact that he's had 3 years in the league and you do compare him to the rookies in this class is probably not the greatest. I think John was like, we were going to take Noah Fant in the first round that year. I think in the first round they originally had picked 21. I was like, well, if you like Drew that much, why weren't you going to take Drew, with the 21st pick? So there's a lot of holes in that. But we'll see. We've talked about Drew a lot on this show, and we probably will continue to talk a lot about Drew going forward. But we can save that for later, maybe future shows. I want to talk about some of these rookies.
Yeah,
I do. I want to talk about the draft. Me and Chris are very open about how much college football we don't watch on Saturdays. We're too busy playing flag football with one another on Saturdays, or I'm traveling to Seahawks games. So we're leaning on the experts now until the draft, until even after that. So just big picture, really quick though. When you do flip on the tape, I'm Danny. I'm watching insert quarterback here.
Yeah.
Like when you are watching a quarterback, what are the main things that you're looking for when evaluating?
So I think the first thing, and this is something that you always want to see in college quarterbacks because it's so difficult to, I guess, get the context of like the offense and like what offense they're running, what style of offense they're running, whether it's a multiple read progression type deal. Like those are the things that you get to eventually. But like the first thing you want to see is accuracy. Like, is he hitting the targets that he's aiming for? I think is a big thing. And I've seen studies done where college accuracy, not necessarily completion percentage, but just like on target throws. And when, you're not having other different variables involved, and PFF does a good job of this, that really does tend to translate well to the league. And like when you got a guy who's playing under pressure and trying to move around, you got guys in your face, like trying to get a ball out quickly, like having that baseline foundation of accuracy is always, I think, going to be really important. So that's one thing. Obviously in the NFL today, you got to be able to not only just like be able to move around in the pocket, but also like move around in the face of pressure, I think. And John Schneider's been saying that for years too. You got to be able to move off your spot. And that's, I think another thing that I look for is like, how can he improvise? How can he deal with pressure? It's not necessarily running. It's moving around in the pocket and feeling pressure and all that. Past that, obviously just poise, which is a hard thing to, I'm sure, just like measure or whatever, but like you can kind of see it with some guys and some guys you can't. How do they deal? Like what happens when pressure's in their face? How do they deal with it? Can they throw off platform? Can they keep a play alive? Obviously, Russell Wilson was huge with that over the years. Extend plays when the structure isn't really there. So there's like a million things like grading. Honestly, just like grading quarterbacks is the hardest thing. Like you see NFL teams mess it up every year. So I think, it's very difficult, but those are the kind of baseline things I look for. Arm strength is somewhat important. And then that kind of goes to like what he's able to do throwing off platform and things like that, where when your feet aren't set, when you're not like hitching up and like getting your back into a throw, like any quarterback can like throw deep in that situation. Right. I'm thinking of like, Baker Mayfield, who by the way, might be a Seahawks quarterback this year. He doesn't really, in my mind, he doesn't really throw that well when he's on the move. He doesn't really throw that well off platform. What he can do is step into a throw and like he has a cannon when he can step into it. But to me, he's not that good once the first play breaks down or once he's forced to move, things like that. So those are the things I look for. But there's a million things, and it's like extremely difficult to figure out what the quarterback's going to do. And I think that's another reason the Seahawks are like actually going to give Drew Lock a chance here, is because maybe in this new situation, in this new scenario, in this new offense with this offense coordinator, maybe he can kind of start to blossom. I'm sure that's like what they're talking themselves into. So again, it's a million variables that go into quarterbacking, but those are the main ones.
When someone says that a guy has arm talent, when you hear that, what does that mean?
It's kind of what I was talking about with being able to throw on the move, being able to alter, the velocity. I think there's like, you got power throwers, you got guys who can like throw the hell out of the ball, but like they can't take anything off of it in certain situations. They end up like overthrowing guys. So like being able to, they call it layer a pass over like a defender at the second level, put some touch on it. Russell Wilson, of course, throws an incredibly catchable deep ball, things like that. But arm talent to me is like I said, if anybody can like hitch up and lean into a pass and like huck it down the field, but your ability to throw when you're off platform, when your feet aren't set, that's kind of what separates guys, I think, and why you see like Mahomes making some of the most absurd throws in the world. Like he has true arm talent.
Yeah, Mahomes in the Super Bowl that they lost honestly might be some of the best arm talent I've ever seen in my life. Being able to throw what should have been a touchdown while he was horizontal.
Yes,
like
insane.
from the ground, hit dude right in the helmet or the face. Yeah, I think it hit him in the face. Unreal. One more thing on scouting. Like, does this require interviews, or are you able to glean like how much responsibility a guy has at the line with checks and audibles and sliding protections and stuff? Can you see that stuff on film, or is that interview stuff?
You can see some of it. Most of it, I think it does require a little bit more digging, talking to and reading about the offense, talking to coaches, reading about the offense, talking to the player, things like that gives you more context in terms of like what kind of offense they were running. Like Matt Corral is a guy that comes to mind here. Like he was running almost purely RPO based offense. Like he wasn't doing a lot of progression reading. Most of the time he kind of knows where he's going to throw the ball before the ball is snapped in general. And so that is something that's like, again, how do you project that to the NFL when they're not going to be doing that at all times? Like that's very difficult, if not impossible to figure out. So I think that's why this quarterback class is kind of confounding too, is because, you got Corral, who's got a cool skill set and he's like got a whip-like arm. He can run around, all that stuff, but like, he's just running this really simplified RPO offense where his reads are very defined for him, and he's not having to like dissect and figure out the defense on the fly as much as some of these other guys. In fact, I think Ole Miss ran more RPOs than almost any team in college football. So that's something to keep in mind. Like a guy like Sam Howell, who same deal, like they ran a lot of RPOs. He was throwing it deep a ton, but then like if the first read wasn't there, and this bugged me about him, it's like he would just take off running. Maybe that was what his coach told him to do, and that like he can't fault him for that necessarily. If he's like, if your first read's not there, just take off, because he ran so many quarterback draws this year, or just quarterback scrambles. It was kind of incredible. But at the end of the day, how do you project that to the NFL where you're not going to be asking him to do that? So I think that's like the challenge. You do have to get kind of the lowdown from either like coaches or scouts that know what they're running. I think with like a guy like Ritter, you can see him in the all-22, particularly like setting guys up, setting protections, changing the play, things like that, where instead of just looking to the sideline and seeing a sign and running a play like some quarterbacks do, like he's like in there running a offense, and so that I think gives him an edge in my mind going forward. He's not the only one that does that, but that's something that it's going to make his learning curve less steep, I guess. And I remember when Russell Wilson came into the NFL, like he immediately went in and like ran the Seahawks rookie camp, like from day one. It was like a few weeks after the draft. He'd already learned the Seahawks offense and like basically ran their camp for them. And to me, that's like always, I use that as sort of a litmus test because I'm like, are any of these rookies going to be able to come in and do that? Like, I think most of them are probably Ritter. I think maybe the exception, but like, are any of these guys going to be able to come in here and be able to literally run the camp for the team, like Russell Wilson was. And that's how he won that starting job. That's why, I think he's been so good is because he has that, that knowledge and that ability to do that, the ability to learn an offense and run it and all that. So those are some of the things that are kind of impossible to see on tape, but really matter.
Man, it's just hearing how hard it is to scout QBs. I can't imagine voluntarily signing up for that. Let's give up our guys so we can do that with like 12 guys who are like ages 20 to 23. Like that sounds like just the most exhausting task in the world. And you have to do it while you're doing free agency and all these other things. Like it's just a mess. But speaking of the guys who have to do that task, and I think this boils down to like how you feel about the Seahawks right now. Basically comes down to the answer for everyone, not just Danny or me or Chris, for everyone, how they can answer this question. Would direct this to Danny. Just like, where is your confidence level in Pete Carroll and John Schneider to do well in this draft?
Oh boy, here we go. I can't wait for this answer. Strap in.
I think obviously early in the era of this regime or whatever you want to call it, like the PCJS era, I would have been like, oh yeah, they're gonna nail this. Like they're so smart at like zigging when the NFL is zagging, finding guys that'll fit into their scheme, blah blah blah. But it's been so long of like teams that sort of copying what they've been doing early on with like the long corners and the cover three and all that. They've got so much brain drain in the sense they lost so many coaches that are now like head coaches and assistant coaches and really top tier coaches in the NFL. They've lost so many of those guys from the early days of the Pete Carroll era. That to me, like their edge that they had early on is gone. And so now it feels more just like a coin flip. I'm not saying I don't think I'm expecting them to fail. I just think the odds of them hitting on a draft class are about as good as any other team in the NFL, which is not great. You know what I mean? So like, I don't think they have a super strong edge like I used to think they did. So that's kind of like, I guess the main change. I don't think they're incompetent, but I think that the draft is so hard. I just think the main thing I keep thinking is like, I hope they just don't get cute with everything, just take a good player. Like don't trade back 4 times, and like think you can like be smarter than everyone else in the NFL. Like if you're sitting there at 9, I'd prefer they probably take a good player or maybe trade back a few spots, but definitely don't trade back into the end of the first round. Because I think that's where you see like a big sort of cliff of like the elite talent in this class. And so, yeah, I just don't want them to get too cute with everything and just take some good players, like take positions that matter the most. Don't reach like crazy on a guy. Like I understand that draft Twitter doesn't have all the information and isn't the end all be all like knowledge, but they've done it so many times now where they're like, the Jordan Brooks one comes to mind, but also like Rashad Penny, LJ Collier. It's like all these picks they make are like expected to be like 3rd rounders. And it's like, this is their 1st round pick. It's like, why do you have to go against the grain so much? Like just pick, like go wisdom of crowds just a little. That's kind of my hope. So we'll see how it goes. Obviously I know that no one has all the answers, but it does feel like they've tried, or at least they've sort of viewed themselves as like smarter than everyone else with a lot of these picks. So I hope they don't do that this year.
To make sure we're all on the same page, you are basically telling Schneider to not trade out of the 9th overall, to accumulate more picks, correct?
Not unless you're dropping back just a few spots. Like if you can pick up like a 3rd rounder by dropping back 2 spots or a 2nd rounder by dropping back 5 spots or whatever it is. I don't know, like off the top of my head, what it would cost to do that, but just don't drop back into the end of the 1st round. That would be my goal.
Got it.
Because then you're skipping out on so much talent that could come in right away and start from day one kind of deal.
As you said, don't get cute.
Exactly.
What if the Saints call? Yeah. And they offer, what do the Saints have now? 19 and 16?
So that would be interesting because if you're trading back and getting a 1st rounder, like that's a different story. A lot of times you'll trade back and pick up like a 2nd day pick or a 3rd day pick or something like that, or potentially even like another 1st rounder next year. Like if it's a 1st rounder, I can definitely get on board with that, but anything less than that, I'm like, okay, this is just, 2nd round pick is not a coin flip, but kind of close to it, especially with how they've been drafting the last few years. So, I don't know. That's just kind of, I just feel like volume drafting is good generally. But at some point, sit there and take a guy, I guess is kind of my point. Yeah.
Take a guy, guys. This is the year. You got 9th pick. Go
Take
for
a guy.
it. There we go. Where do you see this class being strong at the top? Where is it deep? And where is it lacking? Where is it weak?
So I think the strongest position at the very top is edge, which is great for the Seahawks because they need edge players. And there will be, even if you're like the 4th edge in this class, I still like the edges at number 9. Like if they take a guy like Travon Walker from Georgia, Jermaine Johnson from Florida State, like at 9, like I don't think that's a bad pick at all. I think, obviously you'd rather have the tight end or the edge 1 in the class, but he's not going to be there at 9. So I think if you're talking about the edge class, I think that's really strong. There's 3 really good tackles in this class. So if one of those guys is there at 9, I'm fine with that. There's a couple really good corners at the top of the draft. And if we're talking about like the blue chip players, like I think Sauce Gardner, I think Derek Stingley are both blue chip players. And then I don't know if Trent McDuffie fits what they want to do. To be honest, I don't really know what they want to do yet. Like it'll be interesting to see what they'll do on defense this year because it sounds like they're going to change, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe McDuffie actually fits what they want to do because he's a good blitzer and he's a good zone guy. Like I don't think he's going to be a press man like Richard Sherman style corner for anybody. But if they're switching styles up and what their cornerbacks are asked to do, like he might be a good fit for them. So, and you may have noticed that those are all blue chip position, or those are all super premier positions. So I'd be happy corner, edge, tackle. I hope they don't take a linebacker. I guess defensive tackle would be fine. It wouldn't be my first choice. Devontae Wyatt and Jordan Davis are 2 really good defensive tackles though. And I think they would make their team better by grabbing either of those guys. But I would probably have it be edge, tackle, corner, or in some order. I would be pretty stoked if it was Stingley, to be honest, or Sauce. But yeah, I think that number 9 spot, that's why it's like kind of sweet spot. I don't really want to trade back because there's going to be a lot of good players right there.
And where do you think it's weak?
I don't really like the linebackers as much as a lot of other people. I think linebackers is a pretty deep position this year. You can get guys on 2nd day, 3rd day that could come in and start. I'd rather they wouldn't spend a 1st rounder on a linebacker, even though they just lost Bobby. I think they should just kind of roll with who they got right now. And then that's a good question. Who else? Like, just looking down the list, like I would say, don't go linebacker, don't go interior lineman at number 9, offensive line. Those would be the main ones. I think you probably just can wait until day 2 to do that.
Yeah, giving up Bobby. All right.
So you're not Danny's not on the draft Devin Lloyd at 9
role.
No.
I like him, but I think he's more, to me, I've seen him being mocked in the top 10 lately. To me, he's more of like a late 1st round type player.
I think there's like a couple teams that if they get him, I'd be like, damn, like that's gonna work. Like I think if the Patriots get him, like I feel like that'll work. There's another team off the top of my head I can't think, but like he just hits people really hard, like hard as hell.
Yep.
It almost reminds me a little bit of when I rewatched the Saints Seahawks game from this last year. And I like really was like, oh, 56 is like kicking ass. He's the best player on the field. And it's like, oh, that's Demario Davis.
Yep.
Maybe I'm getting his number wrong, but like that was
he was nasty.
Yeah, it was like every play I think I tweeted it too. I was like, they keep running it at him like he's soft. I don't know
He's blowing up
why
everything.
that's the case. Like this guy is nasty. That's kind of how I feel watching a little bit of Utah's defense. I'm like, wow, this guy.
I mean, he's all over the place for sure. Yeah. But again, it comes down to like positional value.
No, I'm with you.
Don't take another interior like off-ball linebacker in the 1st round, please.
The name of this podcast, Don't Get Cute.
Yeah, no, seriously. I think that's like Danny kind of hit the nail. Like, yeah, you can take Rashad Penny, LJ, Jordan. They could all be good players, but like it was hard for me in the wake of the draft to find people who had them as first round grades on them. Like with Rashad in particular, a lot of people who had like 3rd or 4th round grades on him. LJ was in that 2nd, 3rd range, and Jordan
Brooks
was
probably.
similar. Yeah, Jordan. I found someone who had a 1st round grade on him, but like I took that with a grain of salt because of his background. But
trying to be smarter than everybody in the room.
Yeah, I wasn't feeling it. So yes, John, don't get cute. Pete, don't get cute. Like how Danny said it. Take a guy,
dude.
Pick someone.
Here's all the best teams in the NFL, right? Like, say the Ravens or the Patriots. Their draft history is a little bit sketchier than some of the other teams here, maybe. But like, I always think about like the Ravens. who just consistently smart decision making in the draft. They've had misses here. Every team has misses, but like when you build through the trenches, you kind of just like take blue chip players at blue chip positions. Like, how's that going to go wrong in the long run? You're going to miss a few guys. But I don't know. Like, yeah, to me, it's just like they're number one, they're drafting reactionary. Like, oh, we had a crappy situation at this position last year, so we got to take a first rounder here this year. I feel like they've done that a few times. And instead of that, just like take foundational guys. Maybe this is now that they're like Russell Wilson's gone, they're like resetting this like slate or whatever. Like maybe now they'll get back to that. But it did feel like they're drafting reactionary versus just like laying a foundation.
I feel like that's exactly what happened in 2018 and 2019 at the top. They couldn't run the ball in 2017. Chris broke his leg. Mike Davis I think Russell actually led them in rushing yards. And then they take Rashad. The very next year, they trade Frank Clark, I think like 5 days before the draft or something like that. So it's like, oh, shit, we need an edge rusher. Let's take LJ Collier. Yeah. But then the next year, they do the exact opposite. Like, we have KJ Wright and Bobby Wagner. So let's take their backup. And the first round, it's just like, I don't really know what we're...
What's the plan here, guys?
I don't see the vision. I don't. So I like that idea. Don't get cute. Just take a guy. I just like that. I'm like,
also like they released Bobby and then he got paid. Like, just keep Bobby. I know that Bobby I know that he wasn't, himself necessarily last year, and his play has kind of started to fall off a little. But like, I don't know. I agree with you. It's like, I don't know what the plan was there. It seemed like something that they really need to run from there.
My job is to find out what the plan is and relay that to readers, and I'm trying really hard. And I have nothing about half the time.
Yeah,
I'm talking to my editor, and it's like, oh, Michael-Shawn, we need something, for this week. A couple stories this week, and I'm like, I don't really have anything because I don't know what the Seahawks are doing. So like, how am I supposed to? I can only write that in so many sentences, which is what I've done. Giving away the game here for everyone who subscribes to The Athletic. Let's dig more into some of these specific position groups. I want to start with these quarterbacks. Let's do this. I got 4: Malik Willis, Desmond Ridder, Kenny Pickett, Matt Corral. Rank them. Yeah. Rank them as how they would fit. Maybe not just broadly, just like if the Seahawks were to take them, your confidence level in that. I want to make this.
Yeah. I think I actually would have. This is tough. I think for me, it's easy. The first two are Willis and Ridder for the Seahawks. And then generally, like right now, if you look at my rankings, it's going to say something different, but I'm doing an update, I think, tomorrow. So I'm going to have it Willis, Ridder, Pickett as my top 3. And I would probably put that here for the Seahawks too. And you could maybe talk me into, depending on what it's going to cost, I might rather have Corral in the second than Pickett, or certainly rather have Corral in the second than Pickett in the first. So I think Willis is the most interesting for the Seahawks because I could see him running what they ran with Russell Wilson early in Wilson's career, getting back to the read option game, getting back to the quarterback being a part of the run game. I think they've led the NFL at least 1 year, maybe multiple years in rushing when Russell Wilson was doing a lot of the read option stuff with Marshawn Lynch. I think that's what they want. They want to control the football. They want to be like tough. They want to kick your ass kind of deal. Like, they don't want to be high flying, high like octane passing game that's very dependent on Russell Wilson being on that day. That's what they don't want, because what Wilson, for how great he has been during stretches, for some reason every year is like, can you swear on this podcast? He sucks. Yeah. He's dog shit on like 2 or 3 games a year for whatever reason. Maybe it's the defense they're facing. Maybe he's just off. You can see it within like a few minutes of the game starting. It's like, oh, this is going to be one of those games.
Right.
And I don't think they want, like, I think that's probably a big part of why they traded Russell Wilson. Not, obviously there's many variables here. Wilson, I think, ultimately didn't want to play here. But I think part of it was like, they just want to be able to run their offense regardless of how the quarterback is playing on any given day, which of course you can argue the validity of that, but that's what I think they believe. And so if you get that back to where you're like running the hell out of the ball, the read option is like creating a whole bunch of opportunities for them to like run. It's opening up, holes for Penny and Carson or whoever they draft in the draft this year. It gives their defense something to feed off of. It keeps the defense potentially off the field longer. These are all theoretical ideas, but I think this is things that they believe in. So that's why I think Willis would make a lot of sense for them. Plus, he's like good, like where he's good, fit what the Seahawks want to do. Like, he's really good out of structure. He's really good making plays where he's running around, escaping pressure, throwing to the sideline, which is like what Russell Wilson was doing for like all the first 3 years of his career. He's good. He has the skill set to throw on the run. I could see him being like really strong in a play action heavy offense. He's not good at dropping back and just dissecting a defense or whatever. Like he's not a guy who's been in a passing game where you're just like going through multiple reads and like, dissecting a defense. So that's sort of the trade-off you get with Willis. Like, are you willing to go back to, and do you want to go back to that type of offense? I could see them doing that. And so that's why I think I would be the most excited if they got Willis, but I think it's going to cost a lot now. Like you're going to have to maybe trade up potentially.
Yeah, you have to jump in front of Carolina at 6, maybe.
Potentially. And I know that some team may be willing to jump up to like the Giants, like the Saints now have 2 first-rounders. So maybe they're going to try and jump up to like the number 5 spot, which is what I have theorized in my next mock draft. I think it's one of those things where you can't just let him land to you. You certainly can't let him land to you late in the round. I think he's probably going to be a first round pick and probably going to be a top 10 or 11 pick. So you have to commit to that. If he falls though, like maybe that's where you use 40 and 41 to trade back up into the first and grab him. There's a scenario I could see that happening. It sounds like the buzz for Desmond Ridder has been growing a lot. He's meeting with the Seahawks, I think, this week.
Yeah, he is.
And he's another guy I think that would actually make a ton of sense. Like skill set wise, he's not that off. He's not that different from Russell Wilson was early in his career in the sense that he's very smart. Like he's what I mentioned earlier in the pod, where he's the type of guy that can come in and run the rookie camp. He's smart. He's like a leader. The guys rally around him from everything we've heard. He's like a 4-year starter, been a winner. I know that people cringe when you say that, but can you absolutely see John Schneider thinking that, oh, he's a winner? That's great. Let's
100%. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I think he kind of fits what they want to do. And it would not surprise me whatsoever if they draft Ridder. I think actually the odds are that most probably that they'll draft Ridder out of anybody. And then I'd follow that up with Corral would be the other guy, but I think they could get him in the second round. I think he's going to be a second rounder, if not further back. If he falls to the third round, maybe they grab him. So, and I think again with Corral, it's like it's a projection. He's not as big as these other guys. He doesn't have as big of an arm, though he does have a good arm. But it's the thing of like, how does his experience translate to the pros? I think it's something that they're going to have to like develop you for a few years, which is maybe why they like do the lock as a bridge quarterback type deal. And then work from there. So I think those would be the top 3. And then I just don't think they're going to like Pickett for whatever reason. Maybe they do. I don't know.
That works out.
There we go. I like that one, the ending one. It's short and sweet.
Yeah, maybe I like him.
He doesn't have big hands. He has tiny hands.
And he wears 2 gloves, right?
He's off the board right there. Yeah.
Does he wear 2 gloves?
Yeah, he's two gloves.
I don't see that. I don't know why he would do that.
Small hands, 2 gloves.
Oh, yeah. All right.
I want to switch to the defensive side of the football and look at the pass rush. The Seahawks don't plan on bringing back their sack leader in Carlos Dunlap, so they need someone to come in and rejuvenate this pass rush. You mentioned a few guys earlier in the show, but who do you think could come in with this 3-4 scheme that they're rolling with and get this pass rush back to, I guess, with Frank Clark, where they actually were pretty damn good?
Yeah. So I would imagine Hutchinson's absolutely not in the picture. I think he's going to be the first pick. If he's not the first pick, he'll probably be the second pick. I think if Kayvon Thibodeau falls, like that would be an almost ideal situation for the Seahawks because he is, number one, sort of local. Like he went to Oregon. He's kind of got the West Coast vibe. And I think that fits like, from a personality point of view, like the big knock on him is he has interests outside of football. I think Pete Carroll is like kind of the coach that would be the one that would be most willing to accept that and help this person thrive with everything they want to do off field too. So I don't think that would be a big deal to the Seahawks, although that could be totally wrong. But if he falls to number 9, Thibodeau would be awesome because I do think he has the skill set to kind of do everything that they want to do. He's primarily a pass rusher, but he's a good run defender. He's athletic enough. I wouldn't be surprised if he could just drop back and be comfortable in zones if they wanted him to do that off the edge. He's even a type of guy, I think he's thick enough to like move him around a little bit on the offense or on the defensive line, rush from the inside if they wanted to use him that way. So he would make a ton of sense. Travon Walker from Georgia, if he is there at 9, which is not sounding likely now, but if he's there at 9, it wouldn't be surprising whatsoever if they like him. He's kind of not, he's similar, I guess, in style to Frank Clark in the sense that he's like a really good athlete, really thick built guy with long arms. who didn't have a ton of production in college, but like you love the measurables and the potential, the twitchiness, the power, all that stuff. So he could be a guy I think that they would be very interested in. And then I think Jermaine Johnson is the other one that's been connected to the Seahawks a lot too, and he makes a ton of sense. I don't know for sure if it's a great value to pick him at 9. It does sound like he's going to be a top 10, top 15 pick. So I don't like him quite as much as the other players, the other pass rushers in the top 10. He's just not quite as twitchy, I think, but he's very powerful. Again, he's kind of like Frank Clark mode, like very powerful, long, like rock solid defensive end that could probably get you like 6-7 sacks kind of deal and be like a good member of your defensive rotation.
Okay. I like the sound of that, man. Darryl Taylor needs as much help as he can get right now.
Do you like it? Do you like any of the? I'm trying to think of guys I kind of saw like in the second round. It was like a guy from Penn State. I want to say.
Oh yeah, Ebiketie.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure I'm
too.
saying his name right, but yeah, he's awesome. He's a late first round probably, but he's really long, really explosive, really bendy. He reminds me of Darryl Taylor actually quite a bit.
There we go. Okay.
So he would be, I think, a great fit for them. Yeah, if he's still there at 40, that's like the steal of the second round for me. But I doubt that. I think he'll probably be a late first rounder.
Maybe I'll email that clip of Danny saying, "Hey, if he's available at 40, that'd be a steal." You think the Seahawks will bite on that?
Well, the interesting thing about the Seahawks with the edge position now is I'm almost always exclusively looking for guys who can rush from a 2-point. Now, which is like that was nice before, but now it feels like a necessity now because you look at their cuts that they've made. Carlos Dunlap, Benson Mayowa. Not like these guys couldn't rush the passer anymore. It's basically like we've been in the league for 10 years because we're 4-3 defensive ends, guys.
Right,
like,
right.
That's what I am now. Whereas Darryl can just stand up, put his hand in the dirt. Yeah, my man from Penn State. I don't know how to say his name, which is why I keep saying the school. I know his first name was Arnold
Ebiketie.
Let's go with that. And even what about my man from South Carolina, Kingsley something?
Enigbare.
There you go, Danny. Danny's on it with the pronunciation. That's how you know what he calls.
He's definitely interesting too. He's bigger. He's like more of a force, like physical, rock solid. He's not super bendy type player. At least in my opinion. But he is like he just plays with his hair on fire kind of guy. Like he's gonna be a good rock solid edge. This guy Drake Jackson from USC, I think is pretty intriguing. He's like a little bit smaller. You probably have to gain weight, get a little bit, and I think they can do that. Like some guys have the ability to like fluctuate their weights. I think he did this a little bit in college, Drake Jackson. But he has some of that natural bendiness that you can't really teach a guy, and I think he would make a lot of sense for them. Boye Mafe from Minnesota is another interesting guy.
I like him.
Who actually, never mind, because I did comp him to Darryl Taylor. I should take back what I said earlier about Ebiketie, but like, they're the same style, like long, physical, really explosive. Like Mafe's measurables, like his times in his 40 and his vertical and stuff were like all elite, like 90th percentile. Like he's just a freak athlete, just trying to kind of figure out how to be a pass rusher kind of deal. So he might be a late first rounder, but he could definitely be there at 40. It wouldn't surprise me if he was there at 40. So he's another guy to keep in mind. David Ojabo from Michigan is another one here, especially if the Seahawks are having sort of like the long view, because he tore his Achilles at his pro day like a month ago or like a couple weeks ago. He might not have even gotten surgery yet. So he's probably going to miss most of his rookie season, but he was projected to be like a top 15 pick probably. And he's just really explosive off the edge. He's not a very good run defender, so they may not like him. But he has a lot of potential as a pass rusher. So he's another guy that's pretty interesting, but again, it would be like a redshirt season probably for the most part.
Yeah, I went to I was doing my mock and I was like, let me see about some edge guys in the second round. I got to Boye Mafe and I looked at some of the testing stuff and I was like, oh no, shit, he won't be here.
Yeah, he's probably gonna be first rounder. Yeah,
I was like, I could have them mock trade up for him, but I was like, nah, that's the decisions you got to make. Yeah, 40 is like, let's stay where we're at. Let's bounce back to offense really quick. Let's go to O-line because I feel like, I mean, I've written about it every time I've opened my laptop. It's like the offensive tackle situation in Seattle is like very
Who
scary.
are their tackles?
Right.
Great question.
I forget. I think one of our Saints guys hit me up on our Slack channel because he's doing like a depth chart of every offensive line room of the starters of every team if the season started this week or something, whatever he was doing. He was like, hey, man, I don't even know who the starters would be for your team. Can you tell me? And I gave him, he was like, I don't know who half these guys are.
Who do you think is going to be the left tackle if they don't re-sign Dwayne Brown?
So I told, dang, I can't remember my guy's name now. One of our Saints people, but I told him from left to right, Stone Forsythe, Damian Lewis, Austin Blythe, Gabe Jackson, Jake Curran.
Man,
yeah. Your words, exactly. Man,
I mean, maybe.
Yeah,
maybe that's good. I don't know.
That's just kind of scary to me. Right. So let's assume we're the Seahawks. This is a Seahawks mock we're doing here just for 9. Mm-hmm. We assume that Icky's gone, and we assume Evan Neal is gone.
Damn it!
I would. Okay. Do you think is there a world where you think either of those guys last to 9?
Probably not. Probably not. There is a chance, I suppose, if there's an early run on edge rushers and quarterbacks. So, like in that world, I could see it. Like at one of those two, Evan Neal or Ike Ekwonu, being there, and then you run to the podium. That's an expression. I don't even think there's a podium anymore. But yeah, I think I've seen people, including big draft media, mocking Charles Cross from Mississippi State to the Seahawks at that spot. Mm-hmm. And I like Cross a lot, but for some reason, I just think that they're not going to like him that much because he isn't as well versed as a run blocker as the other guys. Like he was in Mike Leach's offense, right? Like, he's doing a lot of pass blocking. He showed promise. I think he flashed as a run blocker. But he's just not. He's not in the same level of a run blocker as Ike Ekwonu and Evan Neal. And so that might be something that they're like, well, we'd rather have a guy like Trevor Penning, which I think would be like the worst realistic scenario for that number 9 spot is them picking Trevor Penning for me. Because I don't think he's a first rounder.
Oh no.
I think he's a fringe. Right? He's a fringe first rounder. Yeah. Northern Iowa. Here's the problem. I think he's probably going to be a good player, but like, you're picking, this is getting cute again. Like this is the Seahawks getting cute. You're picking a small school guy who has, in my mind, pretty clear like developmental issues that he's still going to have to work out. He's going to have a massive jump in competition. He's like a really athletic, gritty guy. Like he's like a glass eater type guy. So I'm sure they love him. And so now I'm nervous they're going to pick him at 9. And I think that's going to be bad value. I'd way rather have just like so many other guys at that spot, I guess is my main point. It's not that I necessarily hate Penning. I think Penning will probably end up being a fine pro, but like just like so many other guys, so much more at that spot. And I could see them painting themselves into a corner and be like, we have to take a tackle, blah, blah, blah. So that would be like my word. That'd be like Danny's down bad. Like I'm going to be just like distraught if that's the case.
Well, yeah, that's the thing about the draft when you're covering it from a Seahawks perspective is you can be logical and you have to, in the back of your mind, account for something illogical happening there or getting cute. I mean, even I just telling, I think maybe last pod or a couple pods ago, I was looking at some of their draft stuff and I was like, just even look at 2012, like their greatest draft ever, in my opinion. Like they traded out of the pick that became Fletcher Cox, for to take Bruce, I think at 15, they had 12 and move back to 15. It's like, that's not like Bruce is fine, but it's almost like just take a guy, I think. Yep. Like one of those trying to get cute when you could have had an all-pro defensive tackle.
That's exactly what I'm saying, because you can do that like, every time they trade it back. Obviously, you pick up a couple extra picks, but if you really went back and like did all the math and like who they got, I think like it's 75-80% of the time you're like, okay, we should have just stayed there and picked this guy. You know what I mean? Like, we would have had a really good player instead of more mediocre players. But on the other hand, like I do philosophically like believe in volume drafting because it's such a crapshoot. Having more darts to throw is good, but like, it's a double-edged sword. It's a hard balance. Or it's a hard thing to balance, I suppose. And hindsight, of course, is 2020. But man, that's just like my whole thing is like just take a good player.
Yeah, the 2017 draft is probably one of the most important of the Pete Carroll era after, like in the post Super Bowl era for them. The 2017 draft is probably one of the most pivotal, and it's a really good example of what you're talking about, Danny. We're trading back, like in theory, was like fine, but like for example, before they took Malik McDowell, they traded out. They traded like 3 times, and the players that they could have taken in those times, they could have taken TJ Watt, they could have taken Ryan, I don't know how to say his Ramczyk, the Saints tackle.
The tackle.
They could have taken TJ Watt, Ryan Ramczyk, or or Cam Robinson. And even like they could have got better in the trenches, like valuable positions, tackle and edge. And even then they did not. They took the Malik one pick before Buddha went off the board. So it was like not only did the strategy backfire, by the time you got where you wanted to be, you still took the wrong guy.
Right.
In theory, like that was where getting cute was like at its worst right there. Now every time the Steelers are on primetime, one of my homies who's from Seattle, big Seahawks fan, he texts me every time TJ Watt gets a sack. So I get a lot of texts.
You got like 20 you got 20 texts this year, yeah.
Oh, tons of texts. Shout out to our homie Billy. I get a text from him like every time. It's like, dude, why didn't we take TJ Watt?
It's funny because TJ Watt was like, I feel like he'd be so their type of guy too. Like football, like meathead, just like most athletic guy, like yeah, exactly. Blue collar, like culture changer, like intensity guy. Like, why did they not just pick him?
Yeah, we try to get cute. We think Malik McDowell is going to be our guy.
Yeah, and I think that they're also the reason the 2017 draft is so interesting. There were some of those, I don't have them all in front of me, but some of those trade backs, more darts or more bites at the apple, I think Schneider likes to use. Like one of them ended up being Chris Carson, but then another was like Lano Hill, and like one of them I think was David Moore, but then like another one was like Nas Jones, where it's like, okay, it can work, but it doesn't. It is that hard balance of like, yeah, what is more bites at the apple worth relative to having a tackle for the next 10 years?
Yeah, I gotta I've my buddies and I have talked about this for a long time. Justice Mosqueda, who does draft work, really good draft work, his thing, and I totally kind of like buy this, is like the draft is over after the 4th round. Like nothing after the 4th round matters. Those are just literal lottery picks. Like, you telling me like David Moore or Chris Carson is actually going to move the needle? Like, no. You know what I mean? Like, that's cool that they hit on those guys, but you can find a replacement level running back pretty much anywhere. I know I like Chris Carson a lot too, by the way. Like, I think he's a really good runner, but like, it's not like that. Those picks, like 5th, 6th, 7th round picks, to me shouldn't even factor in at all. Like, it's nice if you have them, but like, don't trade back so you could get extra lottery tickets. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The someone does a breakdown every year. I got to find it this year of like how likely guys are per each round to make the roster. Obviously, it's a really high in the first round, but then once you get after the 4th, it's like, woof, these guys just even making your team,
right?
Damn, contributing for a second. Just even making it to where their parents come see them in a regular season game, like is a stretch at that point. Like you are getting lucky. A Chris Carson is just like not once in a lifetime.
He's a home run.
Yeah.
Grand slam.
Like the odds of that are like, and the Seahawks
the scratch ticket. It's like, yes,
this is why I feel like I
won $200.
All these pods, I've been really critical of the Seahawks. I'm really not trying to, but it comes out that way. But that's because of how unlikely it is for a guy in the 6th or 7th round to even make the team. I've been really critical of them trading future 6th round picks to get back into 7th rounds, which they did back-to-back years to get
last year to get Steven Sullivan.
That was 2 years ago to get Stephon Sullivan, and then
excuse me,
it could be Steven. I don't remember. That's how long he was not here. And then
they did play. He never once played in a game.
He played defensive end.
Yeah, he played D end in week 8.
They were like, you know what? We need D end, so you're gonna be a D end now. He's like, all right, cool.
Yeah, and I forget he ended up with Carolina, and then I don't know if he's in the league anymore. And they also did it to get John Ursua in 2019.
John Ursua was their best one,
but
by
you
far.
Traded a 6th to get back into the. It's tough.
Yeah.
I'd rather just try to get the bidding war for him as a priority free agent.
That works.
If that's what you're going to do. Give him the extra signing bonus, whatever. I mean, I really hope, John, I know the Seahawks pay attention to our content. I think all three of us should keep that in mind. I don't know how deep they listen, but they definitely pay attention. So, John, Pete,
don't get cute.
Hear us.
Take the good players. It's so easy. Yeah.
Right. Speaking of,
I 100% recognize that. By the way, it's like really fucking hard to like draft players. So I just want to acknowledge that. Yeah.
There it is. I want to spin it back to the defensive end of the field because I'm a big cornerback guy. I just think that's one of the toughest positions to play. You're always trying to stop a really good player in front of you, and you can't do nothing. You can't touch him. There's a lot of things you cannot do. But cornerback, Seahawks didn't want to pay DJ Reed. They have put themselves in a really tough position over the past few seasons with cornerback. So now they want to change things defensively. They don't have the cover 3 scheme where, hey, we're better than you. We're going to do this, and you can't stop it. They're looking to be aggressive, too high, match coverage scheme. Who fits what the Seahawks are trying to do going into the 2022 season?
Yeah, I have a hard time like figuring that out because we don't know exactly like what they're going to ask the corners to do on a play-to-play basis. I just think any of these guys in the first couple rounds would be awesome. Like I know that they've liked guys with a lot of length, so Sauce Gardner, Derek Stingley make a ton of sense. They've kind of been off of that. I think DJ Reed was shorter guy. Trey Brown is a shorter guy, so maybe like they're more open to whoever. But this is a good cornerback class. Like there's probably, I don't know, 10 guys in this class in the first like 2 days that could be legit like starters for the Seahawks, I think.
Okay.
So I think in the early part, like I would love it if they got Sauce Gardner or Derek Stingley. Like to me, those guys would be the type of players where if you pick them at number 9, they're the kind of players where you're like, okay, we're fine on that side. Let's figure out what we're doing on this other side. You know what I mean? Like we can like they can trust them to like lock this side down. Haven't had that really since like Richard Sherman days. And it really affords your defense a lot of flexibility when you can just kind of like trust that on that side you're set. I don't really know exactly how they're going to run their defense. Like maybe they're just going to ask them to like run cover 2 underneath or whatever, and not put a lot of pressure on these guys so they won't pick a corner because they think they can get like more value later. I mean, that might be what they do. But overall in this class, there's guys with a lot of length, guys with a ton of speed. And there's like 6 or 7 guys I think they could pick in the first couple of rounds. Like Kyer Elam from Florida, I think would be a lot of fun for them. Andrew Booth from Clemson, I like a lot. There's a couple like really explosive guys in like late day 2. Tariq Woolen from UTSA is another interesting one. But yeah, there's just like a really long list of corners this year. I think that would make a lot of sense for them. So this is, I'm pretty sure they'll probably pick a corner in this draft, and maybe they need to.
Let's put you on the spotlight. I know we don't know exactly what the defense is going to do. Who would you take at 9 if you had the GM cap and you're like, you know what, I want to go for this guy? Who would it be?
Any position or any corner?
Excuse me, any corner. Yes, sticking with the corners. Yes.
Probably Sauce. Sauce Gardner. I don't know. Like I go back and forth with him and Stingley because Stingley, I literally have them like next to each other.
1A, 1B.
Yeah. The thing about Stingley, I guess that's a little bit scary, is he was really good, like maybe the best defensive player in all of college football in 2019. But in 2020 and 2021, he missed a lot of games to injury, and he wasn't quite as good. It wasn't quite as like dominant as he was earlier in his career. So like there's some questions like what happened here. But like LSU, like their program kind of fell apart. It was a total cluster. And so like you have to keep that in mind. He had, I think, a Lisfranc injury. So that's also a little bit scary. It's a foot injury that he had to get surgery on. So I'd probably just go like the safe thing. Like you want to have a hit, you want to have a top tier player in the top 10. Like Sauce Gardner is really long, really, really athletic. He didn't give up a touchdown all year. They barely even like paid attention to him. They're essentially just like, we're not going to throw in his direction, which again is like, it affords your defense a lot of like flexibility if you just can shut down one side of the field and trust that guy. And the other thing that's kind of cool is, and I think the Seahawks probably like this, is like he's renowned for being like a football junkie. Like he loves football. He doesn't smoke, doesn't drink, from what I've read about him. He's just like all about ball. Like he lives and dies like football. And the Seahawks are going to love that. And he has an awesome nickname. Like it'd be fun to root for Sauce Gardner. Like, I don't know. He's a lot of fun. But I'd be very happy with either of those guys.
Okay.
What would you like about Stingley if they took him over Sauce, if they're both there at 9?
So Stingley, like he has, number one, he did his pro day today. I think he was he
killed it
showed
too.
Like the elite athleticism that you have. Like he's very fast. He has really good makeup speed. He trusts his speed. He's patient in press. He can play press. He's pretty, he's long, very athletic. He has good ball skills. He's got the size that they want. Like Gardner's pretty big too, but he's got the size and length that they typically have liked at that position. And like, if you go back again to like 2019 season, he was number 1 practicing against Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase every day, which is nice. That's just like a competitive culture right there that Pete Carroll loves to say. And then, he was just like lining up against all the best receivers in the SEC and just like shutting them down. So like you love that upside that he brings to be like a true shutdown type guy. I just think there's a few more question marks about him. Injury, how he's played the last 2 years, which was not quite up to what he did in 2019. So that's kind of like the big question mark.
The thing I like, so I really think they got because I know you said you liked a lot of guys at corner. That's kind of what leads me to like, all right, if you're gonna take somebody at 9, it should be in the trenches or be at quarterback.
Yeah.
Which is that's kind of like my initial stance. But man, like Chris said, I'm a big DB guy too. So if they were to get like Sauce or Stingley, I think who that really helps like quietly is Jamal. Because I think a lot of why they had to have Jamal away from the ball, away from the line of scrimmage last year was like, hey Jamal, we need you to help these corners over here because we just don't trust these guys in the way that we should, particularly early in the year when they had Trey Flowers over there. You look at Jamal just having to help or Quandre having to help. But if you're just like, hey, Sauce, A, your name is Sauce. B, go over there and just stay like you got number 10 for the Rams for this field now.
Yeah.
We'll handle the rest over here. And that just makes Jamal just this like joker defensive player or a star or whatever teams are calling it that. And then you just like unlock, quote unquote, probably one of your most talented defensive players on the roster. Like I get.
I mean,
that's something to me.
Like, so I think that's absolutely, and that was why, and I don't know if it actually ever came out officially that they were trying to get, what's his name, Surtain from Denver and as part of the Russell Wilson trade, but like, it makes sense. Like they could be like, this is our version of Patrick Surtain. I think it was the 9th pick maybe last year, or at least 8th or 9th. And so, yeah, I mean, again, like that's you laid out exactly what I was kind of trying to get to is like the flexibility that you have with number one scheme, because you can basically just run anything if you can trust that one guy. Like going back to the Richard Sherman days, like, you know, part of the reason they could always have some random CB2, like obviously I'm not saying Browner was bad, but like he definitely was vulnerable to some stuff. Byron Maxwell, same deal. These are not superstar players. In the minute they left the Seahawks, like they weren't very good anymore. Well, I guess Browner did do some stuff with the Patriots, but like, I don't know. I think that the scheme and what Sherman was able to do really helped. And then obviously like Earl Thomas could help out on the other side. I'm not saying they're going to run like that defense anymore, but like, yeah, like the ability to kind of unlock Jamal Adams and let him be more of like a joker piece, a guy that can kind of roam around. Like that's what he likes doing. And then you're not immediately telling the offense, this is where you can throw the ball and have a really easy time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that, because I remember like, I admit I would have to go back and like really study the Seahawks defense the last couple of years with like Jamal, but like the numbers you see pointed out when like Jamal is like rushing the passer, like how terrible their pass defense was, because essentially defenses are just like, okay, he's coming from the side. We know exactly where we're going with football. And it was like way too easy for opposing defenses. Now, if you get a really good corner in, again, you kind of like shut down one area of the field. You can kind of like do other things to shut down the other areas of the field. And it becomes a whole lot harder for an opposing quarterback to like figure out where to go with football. So I know the Seahawks have not taken a corner high before, but like maybe this is the year they do it.
Yeah, I think the Pittsburgh, if you will, a really good example, it's the Pittsburgh game of like what you're saying with Jamal. Like he rushed, I think the most he had, like he rushed a lot that game and then just stopped after that game. You could kind of tell like they were like, all right, we've got this figured out. Big Ben has something. He's sliding the protection one way wherever Jamal is. Or they double teamed him off the edge once, which was crazy. And like the ball was just getting out where it needed to be every time. I think only once did a Jamal rush force a Big Ben incompletion. In that game, and it was just like, all right, that's guys, we're done with that. Like, maybe we'll give him 1 or 2 a week, but this is not 8 or 9 a snap. The Pete Carroll thing is so like the highest he's taken an outside corner is 90, and that was Shaquille Griffin.
Yeah.
That is crazy to me. But then I look at some of his guys, like where did he get Sherm? 5th. Where did he get Byron? I want to say the 6th.
6th, yeah. He was like a special teamer for Clemson.
It turned him into a guy who the Eagles gave $1 bazillion to. You know, Jeremy Lane at a Northwestern Louisiana State University College of DeVry University or whatever Jeremy's school was called. I swear it had a million names every time I look it up. It's some school in Louisiana, I'm pretty sure. Jeremy Lane was a 6th rounder. You know, DJ Reed is a guy who just got paid like $30 million. It's a 5th round pick. Like I can see why Pete is kind of convinced himself, like, and even Trey Brown last year, who was a baller in the 3 games he started in the 5 games he played overall. Pete's probably like, my sweet spot is rounds 3 through 5, guys.
Yeah,
like, damn this first round thing. Meanwhile, all of us are like,
don't get cute,
but sauce.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, honestly, I can kind of see where they're coming from. Like, in this class in particular, like, there's some pretty interesting guys on day 2 that I'd be pretty excited about getting, but like. Yeah, I mean, again, it is going back to the don't get cute thing. Like you have like an elite blue chip player potentially in Sauce Gardner or Stingley, and just having the knowledge that you can plug that guy in and like, I don't know, just don't get cute. That's maybe this is the year they do it. Maybe that's just like an organizational thing. They just really don't believe in taking corners high and they won't do it, and we're just like wasting our breath. But I just think it'd be a lot of fun, and I think it would make a lot of sense for them.
Last thing on corners, do you like either of the UW guys?
Yeah, I like both of them. I mean, Trent McDuffie again. I think so. He is not as long. Like he lacks length. I think that's like one thing that could be an issue for the Seahawks. He has short arms. But again, like in this new defense, like maybe they're asking their corners to like play more like zone and blitz and do some different things. Like they want to talk. They're talking about being aggressive. You know a lot more about like what their plans are in defense than I do. I really haven't dug into it, but like if they're not going to be doing what they have been doing, which is like, you know, cover 3 and having guys with a lot of length and all that stuff, like he could make a lot of sense for them because he's like feisty. Again, everything you hear about him is he loves football. Like he's this alpha guy on the defense. And then from there, like the other guy, Kyler Gordon, he didn't test very well. So I don't know if that like hurts him. I mean, obviously it hurts him, but I don't know if it hurts him in the eyes of the Seahawks. He did test better at his pro day, but like he ran like a 4.5 something.
Yeah.
So that could push him down. And he could be a really nice addition in like the second round. I don't think they're not going to need to take him in the first anymore because he was getting some first round buzz, but he might be like a more of a third round guy now because of like the port testing.
Yeah, I mocked him to the Seahawks at 41.
Yeah.
And I had some UW people tell me he wouldn't be there. I was like, you sure? Like, I don't know. Like you said,
I think that's a pretty good
4.5, you know, like
look, I will be the first to acknowledge we make too much of the combine, but like with corners, that matters. Like speed matters. Like teams really care about how fast a corner can run. So I think it will make him drop, to be honest.
Yeah, because nobody wants their guy just getting ran right by.
Yeah.
I mean, there's like so many guys that were like good college corners that couldn't run fast and they just like sucked in the NFL. Like it's like it's a very strong correlation. You have to be fast. You have to be like 4.4 better.
Or just have like a monster brain like Richard Sherman. And just like be able to run, like DK said, like his first time playing against him, I want to say when he was with the Niners in 2018, DK ran the route and Sherm ran it for him. Yeah. And DK was like, that was the first time someone had ever, or actually this would have been 2019. Sorry. But this was like, DK was like, that's the first time a corner's ever run my route for me. And that's like 31-year-old Richard Sherman against 4.3 speed DK. But the speed didn't matter in that circumstance because Sherman knew the route. But that's hard.
And he's like, yeah. And I think that's what made him great. That's why he's going to be a Hall of Famer. Like he's so smart. He knows the routes. He can anticipate, get in front of him. The other thing is like with Sherman, he's such an outlier. Number one, he ran a slow 40, and this is maybe where Gordon, this is actually like what could bode well for Gordon is like Gordon, from everything we've heard, is like a freakish athlete. Otherwise, like he's like a dancer. Like he has all these other like sports that he did growing up that, you know, potentially like they will make up for the lack of like pure blazing straight line speed. With Sherman, I think he was like a champion triple jumper in high school. Like he's a really good athlete. He had a good vert, and of course he's 6'3" with like really long arms. So that like extra inch or two of like reach, and you've seen it a million times. Like how many times was he in trail coverage and he reached back and like just deflected a football? Like that extra inch or two of length is like having an extra tenth or two of a second on your 40. You know what I mean? Because you're disrupting the passing lane. So he's a total outlier. We saw how many teams try to get the next Richard Sherman. Like, did any of them work out? Like how many of these like tall, long corners that teams try to get, like Jean Baptiste or something like that? The Saints drafted, I think he's actually on the Seahawks shortly. There was a couple others like 6'3" corners like teams were trying to do after like Seahawks found Richard Sherman, and like none of them worked out.
It hasn't really. I mean, obviously Jalen Ramsey's big as hell.
Ramsey's like he's just like another outlier, unique guy.
They also had to use like the 6th pick to get him, the 5th pick or something like that.
Like 4th or 5th. Yeah, he was like an elite prospect. So yeah, that's not coming around every day.
No, it's not.
Danny, I got to know, man, how'd you do in fantasy last year?
I did pretty well. Like generally speaking, I won at least one league. I think I won 2 leagues.
Damn. Okay.
But I'm in a lot of leagues. So like I would say I probably didn't do as well as I should have done.
Okay.
The problem is, and I'm going to blame it on this, it was a weird ass year. There was like a ton of weird ass injuries. So I'm just going to say, I'm going to chalk it up to variance. This year, I'm going to do better, hopefully. No, I don't know. Fantasy football is a lot of It's a lot of luck, by the way.
It is a lot of luck. I got lucky. I won my first championship
Nice.
this year. I had Patrick Mahomes as my quarterback. I went back and looked last year to see who you had in your tier 1, tier 2. You had Russ in tier 2. Now that he is with the Broncos, Mr. Unlimited, will his range grow? Will he be considered a tier 1 quarterback, especially with the weapons now than
Probably
Denver?
not.
Probably not. Okay.
Probably not for me. I mean, I do
That's
think
fair.
I think he'll be around the same. Like, do you guys think? I guess this is a good question for you guys too. Like, do you think he's going to be all that different in Denver than he was in Seattle?
I think he will actually.
Okay.
If
like
the
volume, like passing and tons and tons of touchdowns. Like, I would love to see that. Like, the let Russ cook thing. But
I think we're gonna see what we saw 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Except for it's gonna be 17 weeks of it.
Man,
so
I hope so.
He should throw 35 plus touchdowns. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Because he has the weapons, and from all what I heard from the press conference that they did, we're gonna let you cook, Russ.
Yeah.
I mean, they could change it, but I think that is something he will be doing, and that's more pressure on him. But he wants that. That's what Russ lives for. I mean, he named his kid Win.
Yeah, I'm not as sure, just because I think that you don't become a new guy in this will be year 11 for him. I do think let Russ cook has some limitations that show themselves eventually. Like, I think every time I talk to people about that 2020 season, they just tell me, and I tweeted this the other day, like, the Rams really broke the Seahawks. Like, they killed that let Russ cook thing by themselves. The Bills game was bad that year, but you don't play the Bills that often, so you can count that up as an outlier. They were also just uncharacteristically bad on defense that game too. But like, just playing the Rams 3 times in 9 weeks in 2020 just killed that. Like, Pete was like, no, like, guys, this is why we haven't done that for 8 years, because it'll look like this eventually. Some team's going to too high us, do some post safety or post snap rotations with their safeties, and then kick our ass.
See, that's why I'm like a little skeptical that he's going to be the high flying, high octane offense that I think people want him to be. Like, I think he'll be probably a little more prolific than he was in Seattle, because it's not Pete Carroll, right? Yeah. Like, I think he'll probably be marginally more prolific in terms of like the volume numbers and the total passing attempts and all that. But like, we saw this last year with freaking Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. Like, two high defenses can like really slow you down if you're like a vertical passing offense. You want to run a lot of vertical offense. Like, that's what Russell Wilson's best at. He's not good at like dinking and dunking down the field, right? So, or at least, you know, his skill set is somewhat limited because he doesn't like to work over the middle of the field. He loves passing deep. He loves passing deep down the sideline. If teams are taking away that and, you know, essentially daring you to like pass underneath, that's where I think Russell could run into some problems. That's probably, you know, that's where Patrick Mahomes ran into problems. That's where Josh Allen ran into problems. Like, it took like the Chiefs almost the entire year to kind of like figure out what they're going to be. And look, they traded Tyreek Hill.
Man.
So like, I don't know, like I think the too high trend and like the way teams are playing defenses and the way teams are playing these really elite big arm quarterbacks these days is like changing the game in a lot of ways. It's part of the reason we've seen so many of these huge trades. We make a joke on our podcast, like the too high killed like the NFL as we knew it, like from like 2 years ago. Like, Russell Wilson's traded because of the too high defense. Like, Tyreek Hill is traded because of the too high defense. Like, we're exaggerating, but like maybe not. Like, it actually might be a big part of the reason. Like, some of these teams are like, look, we have to invest in other things if we're not going to be able to like just throw the ball deep every play. So I don't know. That's obviously a huge simplification, but it is kind of like interesting to think about how that's going to affect Russell Wilson going forward. Like, is he going to be able to run what he wants to run? Because, you know, we go back to when the let Russ cook era sort of fizzled out after starting really, really hot, like in 2020, because it was awesome there for like 6 or 7 games. And then I think teams started to adjust what they were doing to the Seahawks defensively. And you hear like Tyler Lockett, some of these like DK Metcalf, like, oh yeah, they changed up things. They weren't letting us go deep, and things started to fall apart a little bit. So I'm curious to see how they're going to like figure that out.
Yep. From the one last thing on Russ, the reason why I'm a little skeptical is like, if like when Rusty's too high, he kind of wants to throw, what's it called? It's like a honey hole shot, like right behind the corner in front of the safety, like still to the sideline. He throws it really well, but like when you see too high, I would almost want my quarterback to be like, all right, I just want you to throw that dig right in the middle of the field. And until Russ is like, I'm gonna kill him there instead of over there about that honey hole shot. Until you're killing them in the middle, I'm like, this will eventually fizzle out. Like, you got to be able to throw that.
That is like, I love that point, and that is why Look, they tried to run the Rams offense last year. They brought in the Rams passing game coordinator, Shane Waldron, and they wanted to, I think, in theory, run this Rams offense. The Rams offense we saw this year, like with Stafford, he was hitting the backside dig like nobody's business. Like that was like a huge part of their game. Kupp probably had an incredible amount of production on that play.
Woods too.
Yeah, and so and like you said, like Russell Wilson just doesn't really want to throw that. So, and maybe he can't see it. Like maybe there is something to the fact he's short. Like, sorry, it's probably true. So yeah, I think it's definitely there's a lot of variables in football, turns out. And it's not as easy as like, oh, pass more. So I don't know. It's gonna be very interesting.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Last thing on just any draft stuff before we get Danny out of here. I watched like Desmond Ridder throw like 3 backside digs on some film, and I was like, "Oh, take him.
This is my guy." I think he could run. I think he could run the offense they want to run. Like, I think it actually would make a lot of sense. We'll see. I'm kind of getting excited about Ridder. Talking myself into him too.
I just hit up one of the homies just like an hour ago. I said, "Hey man, I talked myself into Ridder. Like I've done it.
Yeah.
I've done it. We'll see if I talk myself in the corral like in the 3 weeks up until the draft.
Yeah.
We'll see. Ladies and gentlemen, listen to the Seahawks Man to Man podcast. That is Danny Kelly of The Ringer. Does great draft work, as you guys can tell. Watches way more college football than probably anyone actually should. Definitely more than me and Chris do. And Danny, we appreciate you so much. Is there anything you want to plug? Podcasts, articles you got coming? Anything before you get you out of here? Yeah,
the Ringer NFL draft guide is up. It's going to be a big upload, I think tomorrow, up to 75 players. So it's at the NFLdraft.theringer.com. Check that out. And then I'm a co-host on the Ringer NFL Draft Show. I'm always terrible at getting these names. The Ringer NFL Draft Show, which is twice weekly up until the draft. So yeah, go check that out.
Yeah, please. The draft guide. Danny's one. There's a few draft guides that I kind of swear by. Dan Brugler's The Beast at The Athletic is one, and Danny does a great one as well. Please check that out. Thank you guys for tuning into the Seahawks Man to Man podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Athletic, wherever the hell else you can listen to the podcast. We appreciate you. We're going to lean into more draft content all the way up until things kick off later this month. Until then, we are out. Make sure you guys go follow Danny Kelly and listen to all his work. On that note, we out.